Mike, you were recently named in ICMI's top 25 CX thought leaders list for the 7th year in a row. I think that is huge. And I would love to know, how does that make you feel?
Oh, I'm really, honored to have that happen. I know it's voted on by the public and our industry. So I feel really honored, to have that happen. And I'm glad that I've been able to share information and I guess help people in some way to help them with their, with thought
Right.
leadership.
Right. And why do you think thought leadership matters so much in CX? What are some of the best practices that we should be considering?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is, and I was guilty of this myself as a leader in, in a corporation, is it's really easy with all the day-to-day challenges, all the operational issues, to not have time or not have a focus at looking outside of your company. And so in so many ways, I find, and again, it happens, you just get so swamped with things that you're just focused internally inside of your own contact center operation and not looking outside at what's going on in the industry. And so I think it's really important, just to stay current in terms of industry trends and best practices, just to poke your head up once in a while outside of your company and go to a contact center association conference, convention. And I'm a bit biased because I'm on the board of a contact center association here in Toronto. But again, we try to go and educate our members. Right. And let them know what's happening overall in the industry. So, read trade journals, look at ICMI, for instance, or Contact Center Pipeline, great trade journals and websites that give lots of information, because you want to find out what's going on in terms of digital transformation. What are the big challenges in people leadership? You want to do that so that you actually get those new ideas coming in. Otherwise, you're in your own silo in your own company and you're not developing it all and you can't help your team at all.
How do you look at the relation between customer experience and customer happiness? Would you say that a great customer experience necessarily equates to customer happiness, or is that a myth that we are looking at?
Well, it really depends. I mean, I really view it, even a very good, say, we'll use that term, very good customer experience, as being like the minimum or the floor for the relationship itself. It won't necessarily make them happy or incredibly loyal. It may just be their minimum expectation that the darn thing works. Okay, the order came on time and it was accurate. That's a minimum expectation, that's there. As far as the greater expectation, great customer experience, customer delight used to be a term that was tossed around years ago, in that sense, that can, going the extra mile, make the customer extremely happy. And there's an old saying, you never know how good a company is until you've had a problem with them.
Right.
And then you find out. And if it's resolved quickly, resolved well, it can actually build loyalty. You can count on them. Okay. And that can build loyalty. And that's really important. So again, it's just that idea about, and just trying to find out also what will make your customers happy. And I want to clarify with that. Customer happiness is very individual. My idea of what a great experience is may be different than your experience agreement in terms of what you want for that. So part of it is to try to find out what makes your customers happy. And whether it's marketing surveys, focus groups, customer satisfaction, NPS scores, etc., try to find out what makes your customers happy and what you can do to actually tailor that. Because it's going to vary depending upon what their expectations are, right? What the product is. If I spend $5 on something versus $500, I want the $500 one to work much, much better, in terms of doing that or whatever. So, again, what are those expectations going forward and trying to match those?
And since we're talking about customer loyalty, what do you think customer loyalty is not? Because when we talk about repeat business, does that equate to having loyal customers? Because I might come back to a business again and again, right? But why am I coming back to the business? That also is an integral part of the story, right? So how would you differentiate that? I mean, how can we have a great CX, but also we know that we are building a very loyal customer base out there, something that would sustain for a very long period of time. And we know that our customers are coming back and we know why are they coming back.
Right. Well, I think that's the key, is knowing why they're coming back. So again, getting to the idea of, focus groups, marketing surveys, voice of the customer, try to find out what is it? Why do they come back quite a bit? Because you can have repeat business, but it might be based on things like lowest price point or lack of availability of competitors in your local area, et cetera. There could be reasons why you're the default choice, not necessarily a loyal choice. So you have to find out, what is that? And are your customers truly loyal? Or is it just that you've got other operational things like great inventory versus a competitor that are really driving customers to you? Because again, you need to find out what the core reasons are for that. The other thing to think about too is in terms of, loyalty in terms of, you know, is it the kind of product that really instills loyalty? In other words, is that kind of sort of high touch environment where, you know, customer experience is really crucial as part of why someone's choosing to buy with you? Or is it a kind of product like, say, laundry detergent, where it's fairly generic, fairly commodity priced? So things like lowest price, having more store points of sale, et cetera. Those are things that are driving your repeat business, you know, in terms of doing that. So again, even examining what you're offering and how important customer experience is in the overall buyer's impression or buyer's need for that is important.
Right, right. And when it comes to sales, Mark, you have been involved in a lot of training. So I would like to pose this question to you. What factors influence customer happiness, and how can we ensure that these are being met? What is it that the sales people should really focus upon? What should they really prioritize?
I think the biggest thing really to focus on from a sales perspective is in terms of building the relationship and getting to know each individual customer. So whether you're doing inbound upselling, for instance, in a contact center,
Right.
or you're doing outbound sales calls, it's really about trying to find out what does your customer actually need and what's important to them. And you do it by asking questions and building a conversation. And, you know, one of the keys I talk about when I do sales training is the idea about really having that very consultative sales style of working with your customers and being very professional, not pushy.
Yes.
And the key about that is, you know, I find is so many contact centers will ask their inbound agents to suddenly upsell, and they'll say, okay, but they won't train them on how to do it.
Right.
And so agents are kind of stuck saying, you know, so Grima, have I helped you with what you called in about today? Okay, great. And by the way, and as soon as I hear the words, by the way, that's usually a red flag. By the way, we're having a special this week on, or by the way, have you tried this other product? Okay. And just by the look in your face, I can tell you've heard that before and you've almost rolled your eyes there. So, and that's what we do as customers when we hear that.
Yes.
You know, is that sort of last ditch, by the way, oh, great, they're going to try to sell me something. That's pushy sales.
Yes.
It's poor, it's poorly done. The key is really training people on how to listen for needs. And whether it's reviewing the customer's account as you're trying to solve their initial problem for them, or being able to make some small talk over the phone as you're looking at answers for them, but getting clues, try to build that conversation. So the conversation then becomes, you know, and Kareem, I know you love the, you know, the movie channel, for instance, on our cable package. And I also notice as well that you follow sports quite a bit, at least in your household anyway. You know, with that, we do have right now too a really great sports package. This is only $5 more. Okay. So you're tying in there what you already know about the person. And trying to find out, is there really a need for that or not? And you're making it very conversational.
Right.
And also focusing on the benefit to the customer as opposed to trying to push it out there. What does your customer need? You know, in doing that. So again, it's just that idea about making it conversational, being respectful of the customer relationship, and looking for needs you can fill. Because, you know, if you do it that way, if you're actually trying to go and help your customers with things, solve problems for them, you know, beyond the one they called in about, but solve other problems for them, they'll actually enjoy that and like that. And, you know, a great experience or a great comparison is one contact center in the telecom industry that actually did put in an upselling campaign, but they did it properly with proper training, proper rollout, metrics that were really geared around helping customers and customer satisfaction, as opposed to just raw sales numbers. It wasn't sell 1,000 of these. It was sell an average of whatever of these and have, you know, whatever 80, 85% customer sat score. Okay, in terms of doing that. So it was really focused on that. And what happened is their sales greatly increased, but their customer satisfaction increased. Right. And customers were writing in things like, I didn't even know you offered this. I'm so glad someone mentioned it on the phone to me. And they're happy about that because it mattered to them. And the agent took the time to understand what their needs were. So again, professional, not pushy, consultative, not trying to just push product out the door. That's one of the biggest keys when it comes to looking at sales in a customer experience environment.
Right, right. And there's always this script around these conversations, right? They always have a script in place. And sometimes when they go beyond the script, there are a lot of things they are not empowered to do. So do you think this also adds to a poor customer experience, because the intervention is being done by the higher management? The agents are only trying to do their job. And as you said, they're not, they want to, but they're not able to make their customers feel happy about something, right? Because they're not empowered to do that. So how do you look at poor customer experience? What really goes into it?
Well, I think, you know, you mentioned two critical things. The first thing was about scripting, which is, I'm a big believer in terms of key phrases, for instance. because those can be really hard to come up with sometimes.
Right.
I'm not in favor of long scripts. Anything beyond a couple of sentences at a time, it's really difficult for someone to sound natural doing that, to say someone else's words, to say marketing speak, a whole paragraph or a whole page of that, and still sound natural. And customers pick up on it too. They can tell you're reading from a script. So I think, you know, supplying key phrases, and more importantly, the training in terms of how to use the phrases and how to talk naturally, that's much more important. If you give someone just a whole page of a script to read, it's telemarketing, and customers resent it. So that's one thing about scripting. The other part about metrics, though, is really key as well. Whatever you measure, right, gets done. And so the whole key about this is to set the proper metrics. And it has to be a balance of customer satisfaction and overall sales. And in overall sales, you also have to include as well the return rate. And here's what I mean by this. Classic example from, unfortunately, from my, from my background too, again, in terms of different companies that I've seen, is, one organization actually had very arbitrary metrics. And it was set in terms of marketing. They said, every agent has to go and sell X number of these by the end of the month.
Right.
Well, if you give agents a target like that, and that's the big target, they'll find a way to go and push 100 of those things out the door each month. Okay. It may be bad sales. It may be pushing people into taking it. All right. There was also a promo involved in that. Okay. And so unfortunately, I think some agents are probably doing things like, we'll try for 3 months for free. You can cancel, but just take it, like that kind of a thing. Those are bad sales.
Right.
And there's a really high return rate, a lot of dissatisfaction with customers saying the person was pushy, or I took it because they insisted I take it. The numbers are bad because 100 went out the door, 30 came back. A lot of money losses for the promo, etc. That's an example of a bad metric. Target.
Right.
Okay. A good one is measuring in terms of, which customers would this typically help? And then educate agents in terms of, if you see a customer that has this profile, these 3 key characteristics, they might be a good candidate for this. You don't have to mention to other ones necessarily. Okay.
Right. Right.
Otherwise, agents feel like they have to say it to everybody, one size fits all. And customers hate that. But also along with that, though, think in terms of how do you want to balance those metrics? Maybe it ends up being 50 is kind of a target, okay, for that, but also 85 or 90% customer satisfaction and no more than a 5% return rate, for instance. Okay.
Right.
And again, you got to be careful because you don't want to feel like agents are being punished for any one of those metrics, but at least that gives agents more of an overall picture of, okay, I don't have to push every box out the door. Just look for the ones that are good prospects for it, that want it. I don't have to push like crazy. I just people that really seem happy about it. Okay. And if I do that, we won't get a lot of returns.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So just balancing the metrics out like that and having that sort of holistic picture going forward.
Also, some time back, I was reading an article that talked about the kind of complex support tickets coming in, especially with the pandemic, the kind of questions the customers are asking these days, that has become very complex. So how do you look at the knowledge base of these agents, and how can businesses help them expand this? How can they really work on this? Because when a different question comes up, they're not really prepared for that. So they might need to have something already at the back of their mind by having researched on that topic or having read something on that topic. So how can organizations inculcate a culture where getting and enriching your knowledge base becomes very important?
Well, it does. There's so many aspects of doing that as well. But the biggest thing you touched upon is the key, which is that culture of continuous learning. That idea that the customer service department, the contact center, it's really a learning organization because things are always changing. And so it's really having that culture of having those kinds of updates. And whether it's refresher training, whether it's new product training, whether it's taking advantage of team meetings and team huddles to be able to help encourage information sharing, that's really important as well. Part of it also, in terms of new customer issues that pop up, is that voice of the customer piece. What is the trend? We've got 500 people each in their own agents, each at their own homes right now. How do we gather up all that information now? I mean, back at the office, you'd hear people talking about it in the lunchroom, or people walk up to their team lead and go, "We're all getting calls today about this." Work from home is tougher, so you have to build in deliberate processes there to help gather that information up. And then once you do, actually do something with it to get answers and distribute those answers back again. One of the critical tools too, I find, is a knowledge base. And having a really good, easily searchable knowledge base is crucial. I'm going to be able to, it's funny in terms of looking at knowledge bases, because I find that a lot of them tend to be very text heavy. So you put keywords in, you bring up a giant paragraph or a whole page of information. It's all text-based.
Right.
And it makes it really difficult for agents to go and look through, because now to answer one customer question, they have to do this search. They might pull up 10 articles, only one of which is relevant, but they have to read through at least parts of all 10 to find out. The one that is relevant could be 3 pages long and may apply to a number of different parts of the organization. They have to find out the one piece that applies to them. And so, it comes to a knowledge base, a few things that can help. One of them is having a visually based knowledge base.
Mm-hmm.
So one that's much more visual, that does a lot of things with flowcharts, for instance. So if customer says this, yes, no, go here, yes, no, go here, makes it easier for people to diagnose, agents to go and diagnose and help the customer through. Ones that are very visual as well, flowcharts, diagrams, etc., can really help with that too.
Mm-hmm.
So agents can absorb the information quickly. Also having a robust search function. I actually had agents from one client say to me recently that the challenge with their knowledge base was it was very particular in terms of the words that you use to look things up. And while a customer may give you like 10 different phrases for why it isn't working, you had to only use the one proper one, and singular, not plural, or whatever it was, to have it pull up properly in the search window. So it's just really all about making things easily searchable, visual based. Another example is permissions based. So your company-wide knowledge base can be used by everybody in the company, but it should be classified so that when your contact center looks up something, so say merchandise return, okay, what the agent should see should be just what they need, which is how to start the merchandise return. What does your customer have to do, and how do you start that return? They don't need to see how the warehouse processes it. They don't have to see how inventory control refurbishes the unit. Okay, they have to see how inventory maybe then tries to resell the unit as previously opened or whatever. They just need the one paragraph that applies to them. And not have to sift through 2 pages to find that one paragraph.
Right.
So just things like that in terms of how you set up your knowledge base and how you make it searchable can really give tools to help your agent find things faster.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mike. And in all the subjects that we touched upon today, I think we did discuss about emotional intelligence, empathy, and having that personalized connection with your customers as well. But if we talk about just empathy, translating that into action is a completely different thing than having empathy simply as a value in the company's portfolio, right? So how do you look at that? How do we really translate empathy into action within the contact centers? How can the contact center managers work towards this?
Right. Well, I think one of the biggest keys there is just, first of all, helping agents understand the importance of empathy. And part of that is, and again, looking at a frontline agent's role, it really is geared on it, and they're being measured by things like talk time, average handle time. If you're in more of an IT department, like a help desk environment, ticket closure rate. And that's very functionally, very transactionally focused, okay, in terms of doing that. So it's really, again, looking at proper metrics, trying to balance off those metrics, those day-to-day operational ones, with bigger picture ones about customer satisfaction, all right, voice of the customer, et cetera, to really balance that off and let agents know that the empathy side, the customer satisfaction side, is really important. And not just the transactional piece, but the relationship piece is really important. So first of all is your mindset. What's the target? Okay, what do you want to accomplish here? Not just solve a problem, not just fix the problem, but fix the relationship, fix the loyalty that's there. And that's really crucial. And then tools on how to do it. So proper training and coaching. And what does empathy look like? What does it sound like? If you're on the chat queue or email, what does that look like in the written word? Okay, how do you do that? Is it paraphrasing? Is it a certain vocal tone? How do you want to express that empathy when you do that? And so, it really is that environment in terms of looking at both the statistics, what metrics are measured, and also what skills are used. The other critical component too is for team leads, for managers, directors, VPs, et cetera, to role model empathy with their own employees.
Right.
You can't have a manager saying, look, we got to go and get through the queue really fast. We got to go and hit this AHT target, but be empathetic and take the time your customer needs, but get it done in 120 seconds. It's just mixed messaging, and again, whatever gets measured the most, which is usually AHT, unfortunately, in some environments, that's what agents will try to hit. In terms of doing that. So it's just, really being realistic in terms of what are you asking your agents to do? Because they can't do everything at once. You have to look in terms of what are the gives and takes with that, going forward.
Right. And going forward, Mike, what do you think 2022 will bring for the contact centers?
I think the 2 biggest trends I see, one is in technology. So digital transformation, bringing some and some amazing tools that are there. I know I've talked a lot about the people side of the business because that's what I focus on, but there are also some really great digital transformation tools out there that I think will help take care of a lot of the routine transactions.
Right.
That will help really develop and give agents a tremendous number of tools as well for when they do communicate with customers directly. So a lot of great digital transformation there. The other big side, though, is going to be employee retention and employee engagement. With the great resignation, with the super red hot job market right now, it's going to be really vital for contact center leaders to retain their staff and try to keep people happy and engaged. And work from home, obviously there's challenges there as far as culture, retention, a feeling of belonging, that's there. Also, I just, saw this other article too, which is interesting. It wasn't about the contact center specifically, it was about generally in employment right now, is that because of the great resignation, because of the high demand for jobs, that organizations are going to have to look at hiring people that maybe not perfect or less qualified have in the past, that they might not be able to get somebody that hits all 10 things in their hiring criteria. They might have to go and settle for like maybe as little as 6 out of 10, with the other 4 having the potential to grow into those particular skill sets. And so it's really bringing about things like, number one, if you have high performing people, keep them, make them happy. There's a lot of institutional knowledge and experience there. You want to keep them happy. Okay. Contact centers are interesting, by the way. I don't know of any, it's funny, I don't know of any other business or business unit that would look at losing 30% of their staff in a year and think, oh, that's average, right? They wouldn't look at it that way. I mean, they would look at it as being, oh my gosh, we're bleeding people left and right, and that's a challenge. Now, the one thing I will say is if a lot of that 30% is being moved internally, so they start in the contact center, do a year, move on to sales, marketing, IT, whatever. That's actually okay. That's good. You're promoting people within, right? You're helping to spread that customer service culture all throughout the company. That's really good. But if you're losing 30% out the door to somebody else, okay, that's really, really a terrible thing. So how do you retain people? How do you retain your best people is critical. And then knowing that you may have to struggle to find people. And you may have to hire people that you might not have hired that wouldn't have made the bar 2 years ago. How do you train them up? How do you skill them up?
Right.
Or conversely, how can you simplify the role by rearranging your cues, et cetera, to maybe help ease them in to, doing a more limited role, for instance, for the first 6 months or a year. How do you deal with that? But I think that's going to be the other big challenge is just on the people side, finding and keeping good people.
I think that's a great challenge for businesses to look at. And also, I think you have given us some very interesting questions to reflect upon. And thank you so much for sharing your story and these great insights, Mike. These are very helpful. Thank you so much for making time for this conversation.
Well, you're welcome, Greeman. Thank you very much for inviting me to go and be in your show and talk about this. I love talking about these issues, as you can tell. So thank you for asking those great questions and for sharing this with your audience.
Yeah, thank you so much.